talked many times about giving a Warbonnet to President Shortbull over the many years. And after Tom's announcement of his retirement as the college president, Joe undertook the task of getting a Warbonnet for Tom. The Board of Trustees are fully in support of President Shortbull receiving a Warbonnet. Therefore, it is Council of Elders President Joe American Horse and the Board of Trustees also are giving the Warbonnet to President Shortbull in recognition of his work that has benefited the Lakota people and his accomplishments as president of Oglala Lakota College. Thank you.
Hao Midako Yapi. Lakota Machi Api Tatonga Hahaska no Mila Haska Machi Api Rick Williams. I'm here to honor. Oh, I'll come back.
You all na kaglana you piano na bechusa. Maxine brings him back a matchup na Heritage University at Washington State at na Lakota Chacheki Lakowicho Anglohamani me uya a matchup na le dako a printash na Mr. Shortbull, our President Shortbull, Letrums Woglaka Machi. So he told me to read this on behalf of the work that he's done. Mr. Shortbull's work with the Task Force on Indian State Government Relations. Soon after Mr. Shortbull received his master's degree in public administration from the University of South Dakota in 1973, he was selected as the executive director of the Task Force on Indian State Government Relations. The first research report that was done was on the tax collection agreement that Gerald Onefeather had entered into with the South Dakota Department of Revenue. That allowed for the state of South Dakota to collect the sales tax revenues from businesses on the Pine Ridge Reservation. 86% of the sales tax revenue collected was rebated back to the Oglala Sioux tribe, which equated to the Indian population on the reservation. This was an exceptional agreement that Gerald Onefeather had entered into. However, there was one problem, and there was no legal authority for this agreement, and the first decision of the task force was to recommend legislation to the state of South Dakota legislature to legalize the OST and the Department of Revenue agreement. During the 1974 legislative session, 9 task force bills were submitted to the South Dakota state legislature, and 8 of these bills were passed and enacted into law. The most important of these laws were legalizing the tax collection agreements between Indian tribes who wanted to enter into tax collection agreements with the state of South Dakota. Indian tribal governments and tribal organizations did not have to pay for license plates or the tax of their vehicles as that were purchased. And Indian tribal governments and tribal organizations did not have to pay sales taxes on purchases they made within the state of South Dakota. President Shortbull did submit 2 task force reports that were related to cross-deputization of state and tribal law enforcement officers on Indian reservations and the gerrymandering of Indian vote on the Rosebud and Pine Ridge reservations. The gerrymandering of Indian vote on these 2 reservations resulted in the Indian vote being allocated to 3 legislative districts, with all 3 districts not having the majority of the vote that was Indian. Mr. Shortbull recommended that Todd County on the Rosebud Reservation, Shannon County and the Pine Ridge Reservation, along with a small portion of Bennett County, be included in one legislative district. Unfortunately, the task force chose not to approve this recommendation. During the 1975 legislative session, a state senator named Senator Graham stated during his re-election campaign that the task force was too pro-Indian, and he was going to make sure that it went out of existence. And That was what he was able to accomplish as the task force was not authorized to continue funding and went out of existence in June 1975. For the task force meeting, Mr. Shortbull compiled all the task force reports and put them into a book that he hoped the task force would authorize for publication. However, the task force voted not to publish the book. One of the arguments against the book was that it was too pro-Indian. Mr. Shortbull was very disappointed that the task force members chose not to publish this book. Later in the meeting, Mr. Shortbull saw a non-Indian come into the meeting and walk straight toward him. This man was Jim Ham. He said to Mr. Shortbull that Gerald Feather wanted to talk to him, and could he come to a meeting at the Pure Holiday Inn. Mr. Shortbull answered that he could meet Gerald. In the meeting, Gerald asked Mr. Shortbull if he would consider being president of the college on the Pine Ridge Reservation that was then called Lakota Higher Education Center. Mr. Shortbull said he was interested in being the next college president. He put in his application for the college president position. The Board of Trustees hired Mr. Shortbull as the third president of the college. The bottom line is that it's quite possible that if Mr. Shortbull had not been the executive director of the Task Force on Indian Government Relations, he may have never become the president of the college. Mr. Shortbull, being the executive director of the Task Force on Indian Government Relations, he gained skills that would carry with him throughout his life. He learned executive decision-making skills and how board meetings should be conducted from the task force president, Mr. Don Barley. He learned to be very organized, having board meetings for the board members, and he learned this from the administrative assistant, Carol Axman, who is here today. Don Burley and Carol Axman became lifelong friends with Mr. Shortbull and his wife, Darlene. Unfortunately, Mr. Burley passed away some 20 years ago. If he were here today, he would join Carol in being very, very proud of the honor of being bestowed that is being bestowed on President Shortbull today. Thank you very much.
Oya me taku e pe leo petu ke ha leo woita na ha we chokan khanko you home hinnership oyu ka we chashi trachan we chaka rapi e hane hekta ke oyate auk o he ha we chasha on jigzi taku oyo ne ha na ha taku ota oyate oki chai na ha oyo no we chaka do on we chaka khane ga le on petu ke ha itchatchan garapi we choka o he chale on galushta piktem khant khola le on petu ke roka khane ge ona ha was Ethiopia wa praha on kia piktachon ke o he na you ha wa onyan kapina wokiksi a hedgehog. I'm very honored and pleased to be here to be a part of a great event, great ceremony, the making of the chief. But today is a memorable historical day. Makola, Mr. Shortbull, is going to be made a chief of the Oyate. Throughout the years, the history, generations, people were made Itacha. They were given headdress for their accomplishments and for their life of service. Today, we're gonna, Makola is in a tipi okihe, wakha. So at this hour, the relatives and the board of directors, the elders will go get Makola out of the tipi and bring him here. And we will give him the headdress. Oana yehantu. Oyaki kihiolaktala. Oyak singers, oloanje ayaktala. Oh, yeah, Makola, you may be seated now. Your grandfather, the old man Shortbull, has come to see you, to witness in those clouds behind you on the west. Today, your grandma, your mother is also with you. The blanket that you are wrapped around represents the woman nation. For hundreds of years, the blanket is very sacred to the Oyate. Today, here on forward, you must look after the people, be strong for the people. You have accomplished many things, and you represented your grandfather, who was a keeper of the sacred bundle of the ghost dance. Today, he has returned to witness his grandson. Oya, our chief, Mr. American Horse, will now present you the headdress. Oana wapkaha unyaking tahas iyan. Aha. Tifton rin yun.
Oi Tata! Oi Tata! Oi Tata! Oitracha.
Oh.
Oh, head shit to a little Hawaiian singers. All the ones are oh, head shit. They're gonna feed you. Kola.
Still on? Okay. Thank you for being patient there. Hopefully we can beat the rain. Become college president from 1975 to 79. In the first week in June 1975, President Shortbull became the third president of our college, and he had a major problem to resolve, and that was obtaining an administrative building to house the college's administrative employees, as the fire had destroyed a 50 by 120 feet double wide trailer house that was the college's administration building. He quickly resolved this during his first week on the job by obtaining an Oglala Sioux Tribe Executive Order Committee resolution that required the BI Office of Indian Education to give up its office in the log cabin building on the OCS campus to the Lakota Higher Education Center. By Friday of his first week, the college's administrative offices were in the log cabin building. After getting the administrative headquarters for the college and using his strong fiscal skills to establish budgets that provided for sufficient salaries for faculty and staff, he was able to turn his attention to the most important need for sustained growth of the college, and that was to join the efforts of other college tribal presidents in obtaining permanent federal funding for the tribal college's operational costs. From 1976 to 1977, President Shortbull provided testimony to a U.S. Senate committee that would vote to move a bill to provide operational funding for tribal colleges to the Senate floor. On November 4th, 1977, with Senator James Aberyst's strong work and convincing his Senate colleagues to pass the bill, the tribally controlled community passed the U.S. Senate. On the House side, it was not easy to get the bill passed, as Representative William Ford of Michigan opposed the bill because he thought that it would allow other groups to come to Congress and ask for operational funding for their colleges. In the end, President Shortbull provided the legal justification for tribal colleges receiving federal operational funding. The legal justification was that the states were going to provide operational funding for tribal colleges, and Indian tribes lacked the taxing ability to fund the tribal colleges. Therefore, the only remedy to fund the tribal colleges was the federal government. With this legal justification, the House of Representatives passed this Tribally Controlled Community College Assistance Act in 1978. On October 17, 1978, a permanent source of funding for tribal colleges became a reality. Upside down. When President Jimmy Carter signed the bill into law, a huge debt of gratitude is owed to the full-time faculty and adjunct faculty who taught classes and many times had to travel to the district college centers during very troubling times on the reservation from 1975 to 1979. President Shortbull also taught a course, Tribal Laws, Treaties, and Government, during this period. In 1977, construction began on a new tribal headquarters building at 3 Mile Creek, 7 miles southwest of Kyle, which is now Little Wound, South Dakota. However, in March of 1977, there was a tribal referendum vote to not allow tribal headquarters to be moved to 3 Mile Creek. As a result, there being no way to end construction of a new administrative quarters at 3 Mile Creek, President Shortbull talked to OST tribal council members about giving the new building to Oglala Sioux Community College, which was the second name of the college. On November 6, 1978, the Oglala Sioux tribe gave the building that had been named as Piawichoni to the college, and that building behind me has been the college headquarters for the last 44 years. Also in 1978, the college began the process of developing candidacy application to the North Central Association, with the hope that sometime in the future the college would receive full accreditation as a college. In early 1979, President Shortbull made a presentation in college requesting candidacy status in the North Central Association, and on April 3rd, 1979, the college received notification that it had been successfully obtained candidacy status. With all of the success that President Shortbull had attained for our college on this reservation from 1975 to 1979, it did not prevent him from losing his job through office politics, as often happens on this reservation. With his strong fiscal management, he did leave the college with $200,000 in reserve funds. Due to the office politics, he resigned as president of our college, and his last day as president was June 30th, 1979.
Opila Dennis. Staite washta chanta washta na benchi zata donia hipikilia wopila tanka ejija. Don Frankie Machiapi na halakocha jakitalia terianka biwi Machiapi. I'm going to read President Shortbull's career from 1979 to 1995. With the exception of 6 years being a South Dakota State Senator, 1 year as the Rapid City Indian Service Council Director, and 1.5 years as the Johnson O'Malley Director, 2 summers as the Black Hills Powwow Coordinator, along with 12 years being an OLC faculty member, there were 12 years that Mrs. Shortbull was semi-unemployed. The major breadwinner in his family was his wife, Darlene, who with the income she brought to the family, and Mr. Shortbull's managing of the family's income, they lived okay. But they never lived lavishly during those 12 years that Mr. Shortbull was not fully employed. Mr. Shortbull wants everybody to know that he is very in debt to his wife, Darlene, being there for their family during his lean years and being so important to the success of their family. After not being allowed to run for the OST Tribal Presidency position in 1980, he was selected as the Rapid City Indian House Service Council Director, in which he served in this position for 1 year. The position required him to help Native people who moved to Rapid City. His task was to help them seek employment and advocate for them when they were not treated fairly in Rapid City. He remembered a very interesting situation with the Energy Assistance Director for Pennington County. His name was Harvey Fenner. Tom coordinated a meeting between the Native people and Harvey Fenner to address the many complaints from Native people in Rapid City. All of the Native people who came to the meeting made statements about Mr. Fenner's racial prejudice towards them. After all of the statements, there was an opportunity for Mr. Fenner to respond, and Mr. Fenner responded by saying that he would try to improve how he treated Native people. His statement ended the meeting, but Mr. Shortbull will always remember Mr. Fenner's remarks to him as they left the meeting when he said, "If you really want to help Indian people, advise them to go back to the reservation." As it was difficult commuting to Rapid City for his job, Mr. Shortbull resigned his position a year later and returned back to live on the Pine Ridge Reservation and the home Darlene and Tom built in the Red Cloud community. His next opportunity for some limited employment came about when he ran for South Dakota Senate position in the fall of 1982. To his great surprise, a new legislative district had been realized through the recommendation that he had initially made to the Task Force on Indian State Government Relations. What had happened is that the South Dakota Civil Rights Commission obtained Mr. Shortbull's recommendation that a voting district should be established as he had recommended to the Task Force on Indian State Government Relations. The South Dakota Civil Rights Commission forwarded their recommendation to the Civil Rights Commission, and this commission should consider Mr. Shortbull's recommendation for a new voting district in the state of South Dakota that would include Shannon, Todd, and a portion of Bennett County as a voting district in South Dakota's reapportionment plan for voting districts for the years of 1982 to 1992. A reapportionment plan is done every 10 years after the census is complete. The U.S. Civil Rights Commission agreed with Mr. Shortbull's position that the gerrymandering of the Indian vote with the Rosebud and Pine Ridge reservations was improper under the 1965 Voting Rights Act. The U.S. Civil Rights Commission forwarded their recommendation to the U.S. Justice Department, demanding that this injustice needed to be corrected by the Justice Department. Next, the state of South Dakota was called on the carpet by the Justice Department. The Justice Department informed the state of South Dakota that what they had done with the Indian vote on the Rosebud and Pine Ridge Reservation was wrong, and that South Dakota needed to rectify this situation by creating a legislative district in South Dakota that included Todd, Shannon County, or they would be in violation of the 1965 Voting Rights Act and their 1982-1992 reapportionment plan would not be approved by the Justice Department. After this would have involved protracted court hearings and legal costs, the state of South Dakota agreed to create a legislative district that included Todd, Shannon, and a portion of Bennett County in the new legislative district, which became Legislative District 23. In the 1982 election for the Legislative District 23, Mr. Shortbull won the election as state senator for this legislative district, and he became the first Native person to be elected from the legislative district that included Indian reservations. From 1983 to 1988, Mr. Shortbull was South Dakota state senator, and he had success in this position. He was able to pass a bill that benefited BIA teachers that were furloughed during the summer months. If they would have had a 10-month employment contract, it would have never been possible for them to get employment during the 2 months they were not working. However, the bill that Senator Shortbull was able to get passed allowed the BIA teachers to get employment during the 2 months they were furloughed during the summer. It may be that BIA teachers are still getting unemployment during the summer months as a result of Senator Shortbull's getting the bill passed. Another success for Senator Shortbull is a legislator, which was his opposition to a low-level nuclear waste site that under the legislation would be built in Igloo, South Dakota. It was well known that Senator Shortbull was adamantly opposed to having this low-level nuclear waste site being built. He was concerned that there could be an incident resulting in major contamination released into the atmosphere. The reason for his opposition was that the Pine Ridge Reservation would be close to ground zero if there was ever a major contamination into the atmosphere. Sure enough, on the evening before the Senate was to consider the low-level nuclear site vote, a report came out that there were unexpected ordinances which included bombs. Everybody knew of the danger if the bomb went off in Igloo. The explosion could send low-level nuclear waste into the atmosphere. The next day, the Senate took up a low-level nuclear site bill, and Senator Shortbull spoke against it, and it did not pass the Senate, which killed the bill. South Dakota never again considered low-level nuclear waste sites being within the state's boundaries. After moving to Rapid City, Senator Shortbull chose not to run again as the state senator, as he no longer lived in the voting district where he could be elected from. His Senate career came to an end in 1988. From 1992 to 1993, he was the Rapid City Johnson O'Malley director. He implemented a reward program that gave students in the Rapid City School District awards for perfect and good in attendance and having good grades. In 1990, the position of Oglala Lakota College Presidency came open, and he applied, but he did not get the job. During the period, Mr. Shortbull lived in Rapid City with his wife Darlene and their 3 children, Paul John, Vanessa, and Frank. He spent time coaching his youngest son's Frank's baseball and basketball teams, taking his daughter Vanessa to her ballet lessons, and going to his son Paul John's basketball games when he attended St. Martin's Academy School. During this period, he was very disappointed and dissatisfied that he was not able to get a full-time job in which he could display his abilities as an administrator. He did find time teaching for a while as an adjunct faculty member, which he found very rewarding, but it did not relieve his dissatisfaction of where he was at within his life. As you all know, better things come to Mr. Shortbull, and the next speaker will go over the accomplishments after he became president for the second time of our college in 1995.
How Medako Yapi. I'm going to break with this tradition just a little bit because I remember the last time I saw one of these. And what was important about that is that our leaders' accomplishments need to be heard, and heard in a good way, in a traditional way. And I'm going to go through some of this stuff because it's important. You know, he came back to the college, and what he did was he changed the whole environment of the college. He started new centers all across the reservation. helped educate people all the way to Eagle Butte. He started the library. He also built the math and science program. Established a master's degree in Lakota leadership with an emphasis on educational administration. Second to none in the country. The best one ever for Lakota people, for any Indian people. John Still once said about Tom, he has changed our people. OLC graduate become role models, and for all our children on the reservation and the grades in high schools, they see the struggling years day to day, and they're going to do it because he's given us hope. He's given our people hope. When the tribe was in trouble with the Head Start program, who'd they come to? The stable program across the reservation. Tom and the Lakota College. He developed a bachelor's degree in social work. It's become one of the premier programs at the institution. Over the years, you've come here and you've seen honorings of elders and representatives of different people and honoring them in a good way. He's led that charge. He also got the college recognized for beating all odds. It was recognized as beating all odds institution. That's pretty prominent. And then this diverse issues in education continued to recognize his work with outstanding programs and graduates many, many years. You go down into the building, you look at all those plaques. It's wonderful. Even more importantly is he began the scholarship endowment program campaign. And now we have a significant amount of money in the endowment that's going to guarantee the future and sustainability of the Oglala Lakota College. Along the way, President Shortbull was inducted to the South Dakota Hall of Fame. From 1995 to 2022, Oglala Lakota helped students with 562 certificates, 2,626 associate degrees, 1,283 bachelor's degrees, 153 master's degree, and he's done this with a genuine concern for the people. What's more important, though, is I stand here in support of this man, because when I came here, what I saw people who were hungry coming to the school. And in the tradition of our people, he found a way to feed those students. There was a time when it was very difficult for the students to get here. And in the tradition of our people, he found a way to get them horses by implementing a transportation program. In the tradition of our people, he's looked ahead into the future and has guaranteed that our people are going to have an education through building these endowments. He took care of the Wakanyajas, the little ones. He saw there was trouble there, so he stepped up and he did what he could to make that program sustainable for all of us. And it is these things that makes him our chief. It is these kinds of things that he's done from his heart. He's done them in a good way. Ochunku washtelo, ata lila washtelo. He's done them with the support of my relative, Darlene. She was always there with him. I really liked that when I saw that. So when I come here, I see Tom. And today, what's different? Tom faced storms worse than this on a daily basis. The Wakians, the spirits, they came. Do you hear them? You hear them talking about him? They're praising him. All those relatives who've gone on, they're talking about him. That's what you hear. You know, they wanted to scare us, make you think we had to run, but he stood with us like he's always done throughout his life. Oh, Midaku Yasa, Hetchichulo.
Next, we're going to ask President Shortbull if he would give a statement to the people.
This is really humbling and brought me to tears a number of times there sitting. But you know, the thing that's most ironic is that my great-grandfather, Shortbull, who was a spiritual leader and was involved in the ghost dance religion, but it's been almost 100 years ago that he died. And when I was talking to Richard Mooskamp, he said, you know, your grandpa was the leader of those that went underground with the religion, and because it was forbidden when they were placed on reservations. And so I think of my grandpa now, what a great man he was, and it humbles me to be here before you. You know, the situation with a person who is an Itacha is, and that's how I've led my life in regards to being a college president. And that is, you always do what's in the best interest of the people. You always do what's in the best interest of the people. If you do that, then good things will come to the people, and as a result of that, you get some accolades. But it's always, you keep that in mind, that you're there to do what's in the best interest of the Lakota people. And you know, I've been recently praying to 4 Itachas, Machpia Luta, Red Cloud, Tiope Jikala, Little Wound, and Tashuka Kokipapi, man afraid of his horses, and Tashuka Tatankapstechla, which is my name, Shortbull, my great-grandfather Shortbull. And there are 2 stories about Lilwoon, who is Tiope Jikla, that just kind of tears your heart out. So he went into, in the 1860s, 65, he went to Fort Laramie, because the Indian people got their trade goods as the travelers along the Oregon Trail got their trade goods at Fort Laramie. And he saw this black boy sitting on a pile of logs. And he asked the officer, how come he's crying? He said, well, he's a bootjack, but we've got to go back to the Civil War and we can't take him. So he said, well, he's a human being. I'll take him. And Alexander Baxter was his name. And he lived probably that way towards St. Barnabas, close in that area. And I always remember that when we would go fix graves, and Sadie would say, I've got to go put flowers on my grandpa, a black man. He was my grandpa. And so every year for the last 50 years, because I've been married to my wife now 50 years, we put flowers on his grave. The other thing that is so interesting about Little Wound is that when there was the Wounded Knee Massacre, there were 5 groups that came onto the reservation, and one of them would probably be Rick's family members, the Northern Cheyenne, when they broke out of Fort Robinson. But the first group that came down was Sitting Bull's people. And because the Indian agent there went to arrest Sitting Bull, and after he died, the people came down to Pine Ridge. Then the next group that came down was the Minikoju, Bigfoot's people. And then there was the Wombly people, who, when the dividing line between Rosebud and Pine Ridge, they were Brules, but they were on the Pine Ridge side. And so in 1901, the Commissioner of Indian Affairs came to this reservation. They might have been someplace close to here. And Little Wound got up. He said, "We've got these people here. These people want to stay here. You make it happen that they could stay here." So I'm a tribal member of the Oglala Sioux tribe, and it came about because of what Little Wound did. Because what is the emphasis? You always do what's best for the people, and that's what Little Wound did. So, you know, the white man called us savages, inferiors, that we were subhuman. But you have to realize that many of the practices of what the Lakota people were exceptional. The idea of leadership. You know, if we had the leadership principles that existed or that applied to other people, the people who only become leaders because it puts money in their pockets, are to try to do bad things for people, they're not there for the people. They're there for themselves. That's what's the difference between Lakota leadership and Washichu leadership. That aspect, you always are there to do what's in the best interest of the people. And so I'm really honored today, and it really has humbled me. And I just want to thank Joe American Horse for coming up with the idea. Joe said that he and Gerald Onefeather, I owe a huge debt of gratitude to, because he's the one that recruited me to be president. Dennis Brewer, who's been there through thick and thin with me through the years. And our other board members that are here today, Rosalie Janice, Sophie Conroy, and Denise Redall. You know, the thing that's interesting about Gerald Onefeather, he had these local boards, and there was a period that I came under attack, as Rick said, and I had my wife's friend called my wife Darlene, and she said, "How's Tom doing?" And so Darlene said, "He's hanging in there." "Yeah, hanging by the thumbs." So, you know, as Rick Williams said, there's been the good times and there's been the struggles at times. But through it all, and I wish I would have brought this letter from a student, and he thanked me for what I had done during the COVID period. And he said that he always was impressed that when we had those graduates come through the line, and I've said this numerous times, the thing that just melts your heart is when you know students who sometimes come through very hard struggles, they come through that line. And he said, "I really like that when you smile like that at graduation." So my wife has given me the high sign that says, enough, enough. So with that, I want to thank each and every one of you, and if you'd like to come up, I think there's an honor song, and then do we do that again? Honor song and then shake hands again, or is this it?
Closing prayer and then the honor song.
Okay, all right, so I'll just go back there, you think? Okay. Thank you.
Next, we'll ask Alexi Joe American Horse to come in and do the closing prayer, and then we'll have the honoring song.
Friends and relatives, we'll say a prayer, closing prayer here. Tukash la kantrika, unchimaka, wuniaka, chanupaka, tukash la kantrika, ake, wuyichua, chukule, yechila stepi, na taku kawa stekte, na ta tuza no yakukte, tukata kamonikte, na vitasha itachonka kide, awalakikte. Grandfather, watch over my leader, the chief, Tom Shortbull. Oshimon, Omaki, the new watching chia. Oh, Mitako, I say. Thank you.